Thank you. I greet the CWM moderator, the Right Reverend Reverend Lydia Nishango, greet the General Secretary of CWM, Reverend Dr. Joseph Poon, the former GS of CWM, the member churches, the assembly delegates. I greet everyone here, the ecumenical partners. What I shall be doing here, I shall be doing the context environment of the UCCSA and the UPCSA as they are hosting this 2024 assembly on behalf of the Africa region. So in this article, I'll briefly touch on the few contextual issues of Africa. Special focus will be given to the context of the hosting churches, the two churches, which are the midwife of this assembly within their own African environment, and amongst other member churches in the Africa region that we have, as we are standing with them, because they have implications on some of it, if not all. I begin by saying the history of Christian mission in Africa goes back to the 18th century. I think it has been mentioned in this podium and in this conference, with the pioneers like Johannes van der Kemp, Robert and Mary Moffat, David Livingstone, who established missionary work in these countries. While their legacies are complex and given the entanglement with the missionary work, they laid an effort in the groundwork of Christianity in this context of Africa where we are. The post-World War II era marked the shift towards the indigenization of mission as British colonies gained independence and mission efforts transitioned to local autonomies of churches. This aligns with CWM move towards the devolving mission to independent member churches. I'll move to the next slide of the contributions from the UCCSA and the UPCSA. Leadership and personnel from the UCCSA and the UPCSA have played a significant role within the CWM formation in 1977 and also within the organization as the ongoing life and work and witness up until the present time. Some of the names that really come to mind as I'm standing here are the Reverend John Thorne, the Reverend Gordon Abbott, the Reverend Ivan Peterson, Reverend Joshua Danisa, Reverend Robin Thompson, Reverend Des van der Water, the late Reverend Dave Wandes, Reverend Dr. Prince Divella, the late Reverend Dr. Vianney Velem, Reverend Dr. Jerry Pillay, Reverend Dr. Andre September, the late Reverend Jennifer Sham, Reverend Dr. Cheryl Divella, the late Reverend Basil Manning, Reverend Lala from Madagascar, Pastor Ami Irako Andrea Maha Zoswa, Reverend Peggy Kaponde, Reverend Kutsani Ndebele, Reverend Lungi Lembesheni, Reverend Musaba, Reverend Goodwin Zayinga. Africa region is proud towards the 2024 for the World Council for World Mission General Assembly that is coming to Durban for the first time. Contributions from the UCCSA and the UPCSA. Begin by saying the contemporary member churches are grateful to God for being part of this history. The church is aware that this is the manifestation of the providence of God and the testament of solidarity within the African people who have and are still living the realities of slavery, imperialism, its relics, and neo-colonialism. Amongst many missions accompaniment programs, this assembly sounds uniquely different because it offers the world church the opportunity to eat on the same table with the Africans and reflect based on the true lived context of the sons and daughters of the soil. This questions to the extent to which the assembly provides an opportunity for such an immersion remains a question to be debated in relevant times and relevant sessions. Immediate and lingering context of Africa. Africa is still recovering from the context of COVID-19. As you know, we have hosted this assembly in 2020 at the Beach Hotel in Johannesburg. It has caused economies to ground to halt. Companies, schools, and universities were ordered to shut down in the face of the pandemic, leaving a trail of destruction, shattering health systems, and creating confusions within the church and within the West experience. In the aftermath, some companies have found it difficult to open their doors. Children have been orphaned, trauma, from unconventional burial practices observed, and some church members are now comfortable worshiping online, leading for destabilization of non-church models and affecting the flow of usual mission models. In some, the context has detected a new form of training and retraining of ministerial personnel to best serve the church and society in this environment. As I continue again in the immediate and lingering context of Africa, as the global church comes to Africa through the CWM Assembly, one is compelled to raise the issue of war and conflict in Africa. Though we are meeting in Southern Africa, the larger context must be in some way find space in deliberations of this assembly. Democratic Republic of Congo, where UPCSA has spread its wings, which is part of the catchment of Southern Africa, is facing conflict. And the United Church Security Council report in 2024 in April says the security situation in Eastern DRC has deteriorated significantly in the recent months. Continuing with the immediate and lingering context of Africa, the same is true about Mozambique, where the UCSA has got churches there, where even some of our membership has been directly affected. This is aptly captured by Antonio Cassius when he writes that since the beginning of 2024, Mozambique Northwest province of Cabo Delgado has been engulfed in a new wave of violence. Repeated clashes between armed insurgencies and security forces have been rife in several courts. As a result, around about 100,000 people, including over 61,000 children, were displaced between early February and early March, according to the United Nations Immigration Policy. As we continue with the immediate and lingering context of where you are gathering today in Africa, one needs to mention South Sudan for the attention of this assembly as we deliberate our sessions. After many attempts to bring peace in this country, there are still warring factions in South Sudan since April 2023. I now move to the context of Southern Africa and South Africa in particular. There are many contextual realities that are concerned to the church in Southern Africa. Chief among them are these ones that may be root cause of many imperialism. According to Anua and John Mary Annie 2020, slavery has been used as a powerful tool of exploitation. It denied the African continent of manpower that could have laid the foundation for the national development and transformation, and it aided the bid for colonialism. It is worth noting that imperial conquest has been the underlying denominator in all these vices, and the argument in this application that slavery and imperial conquest institutionalized violence, ethnicity separation, war, and healing of memories of slavery's legacies must also deal with the genocide. The context of Southern Africa and South Africa in particular, Namibia and Botswana, where the UCCSA exists, are struggling against the legacies of Nama and Herero genocide, which was perpetrated by the Germans. This genocide resulted in the massacre approximately 50,000 or 65,000 Herero and 10,000 Nama people by German military forces in what was known as the German southwest of Africa, which is the modern day Namibia. Germany formally colonized the present day Namibia in 1884. Similarly, Zimbabwe, where the UCCSA and UPCSA ministers, their heads that resulted from what we call Raundi genocide, which the society and the church, particularly in Matabeleland, is still suffering from. Then I move to the context of Durban, as I'm about to step down. Durban, where you are, Durban in South Africa. And I'm seeing I have 10 minutes. I won't use the 10 minutes, I'll be done. The context, the CWM Assembly is being hosted in Durban, a city where the warm Indian Ocean meets the golden shores, embodies the spirituality of cultural diversity. Durban churches, including the Groot Kerk, the Great Church, stands as the architectural landmarks reflecting faith and history. The city's spiritual landscape provides a serene context for the transformative agenda of the CWM Assembly. It was in 1912 that Isililo Samabandla that you'll be seeing on Sunday, the women, I think some of them were there in church wearing white uniform, and was established that led to different women's ministries in church nominations. This is the land of the kings and the queens. Hence you see me wearing Mkele. Tomorrow I'll be wearing the full gear for the cultural evening, who uphold the cultural heritage of the KwaZulu Natal. The context of Southern Africa and Durban in particular, the church in South Africa, where we are, finds itself ministering in the most unequal society. If one would visit different congregations, one disturbing trend to note will be the gap that exists between the suburbs and the township congregations, between urban and rural congregations. This is the legacy of apartheid that disrupted cultural growth and created an unbridgeable gap between beneficiaries and victims. This inequality demands continuous deliberations, empowerment, and healing, such as liberation theology and healing ministry, set at the heart of mission. South Africa, brothers and sisters, as I step down, is something of a paradox. On the other hand, it's one of the most unequal countries in the world, if not the most unequal. Half of all South Africans continue to live in poverty. And there is a little to indicate that the poorest will see a reversal of their misfortunes in the coming years. Indeed, the most recent data indicates that poverty is rising from 2011 after almost 2 decades of the steady declines, the statistics of South Africa in 2017. Fast forward by 5 years, the situation is still the same. Hence, the UCCSA and the UPCSA is inviting this assembly to pray and reflect together with us as we continue to minister in this context. One hopes that this new administration, the new board that is appointed, will work for the improvement of the lives and the closing of the economic divide that separates this beautiful nation. As one enumerates what characterizes the context of South Africa, they may not ignore the emergent crisis of the exponential proportion, the ecological disasters. I think as we were coming here, the restaurant outside had mounted a tent before. Then there was a storm the week before you came. The tent actually went up. So we had to do a new tent, as you see that there are drums that are there. So this is the context that we are going through. As in conclusion, having touched on the local context of South Africa without the UCC, without the church, there is a need to be an allusion to the context within churches, UPCSA and UCCSA being winds of unity and renewal. As Masego captures it in 2021, stated there's been calls for the union between the UCCSA and the UPCSA. It was meant to serve, and this call came in the 1970s. A recent memorandum of agreement was signed in 2017 where the previous General Secretary, Reverend Colin Cowan, was the preacher at the assembly. It was meant to serve the churches for 5 years before the envisaged union would take place. Now it's 2024, churches are still in a struggle finding each other, perhaps largely due to the hateful memory of the past, questions of quality, interest, and resources. The process sometimes seems to have halted, yet it calls to continue for us to have this conversation in the corridors. Our member churches in Africa have an active ecological campaign that aims to address the environmental degradation and climate change. UCSA is an example. In the last assembly, we decided to plant 500,000 spectrum trees. We are glad that there is a workshop at this assembly with the key focus of the areas of discussion. In conclusion, the 2024 CWM Assembly in Durban is more than an event, as it is being held in the post-election environment. It answers the questions, where is God? The answer declares in the suffering of his people and his dwelling with his people. This has been physically demonstrated by the CWM by choosing Africa, particularly Durban as its venue. God is amongst Africa. This act goes further to affirm the potential of the African people and the church to carry the torch of full liberation in the project of decoloniality in search for transformation. This will indeed provide strength for Africa and the African church to rise together and face the challenges head-on, drawing strength from its rich heritage, solidarity with the ecumenical church, and the spirituality as it preaches the message of the fullness of life in Christ. I thank you.